To the August 13th regular meeting of the Troy Planning Commission. Copies of the agenda for tonight's meeting are available at the entrance to the room. Additionally, the agendas and minutes of prior meetings are available on the city's website. The meeting will be conducted in accordance with the agenda as presented or amended by the Planning Commission. Roles and responsibilities of the Planning Commission are outlined on the reverse side of tonight's agenda. State law establishes planning commissions. The commission is comprised of 9 members, all of whom have volunteered to serve. Members are appointed by the mayor and confirmed by city council. The other individuals seated at the table this evening are representatives of the city's planning department, the city's attorney's office, and the city's planning consultant, Carlisle Wortman Associates. If you wish to address the planning commission, please come forward when recognized and provide your name and address on the sign-in sheet. Please begin your remarks by stating your name for the benefit of the commissioners. All remarks are to be addressed to the Planning Commission, not to anyone else in the room. At this time, I ask that all cell phones, Blackberries, PDAs, or any other devices that might disrupt this meeting please be placed in silent mode or be turned off. For items that are not public hearings, I will provide an opportunity for public comment. Mr. Savant, are you doing the roll tonight?
Yes. Mr. Edmonds.
Here.
Mr. Hudson.
Here.
Mr. Kempen.
Here.
Mr. Krent.
Here.
Mr. Senzika.
Here.
Mr. Shepke.
Here.
Mr. Schultz.
Here.
Mr. Stratt.
Here.
Mr. Tagle. Here. All present.
Great. Item number 2, approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion? Mr. Schultz.
Move as prepared.
Mr. Stratt is second.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
Mr. Kempen.
Yes.
Mr. Krent.
Yes.
Mr. Senzika.
Yes.
Mr. Shepke.
Yes.
Mr. Schultz.
Yes.
Mr. Stratt.
Yes.
Mr. Tagle.
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds.
Yes.
All right, item number 3, approval of the minutes from the July 23rd, 2013 meeting. Any discussion or comments? If not, may I have a motion? Mr. Edmonds,
I would move to approve as published.
a second. Mr. Senzika.
Mr. Kempen.
Yes.
Mr. Krent.
Yes.
Mr. Senzika.
Yes.
Mr. Shepke.
Yes.
Mr. Schultz.
Yes.
Mr. Stratt.
Yes.
Mr. Tagle.
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds.
Yes.
Mr. Hudson.
Yes.
All right, item number 4. This is for public comment for items that are on the current agenda. So if anyone likes to speak now, if anything on the agenda, or if you'd like to wait until we're into the item, I will do that as well.
This is for not on the agenda.
Oh, I'm sorry, I misread that. Items not on the agenda. Anyone out in the audience would like to speak to anything not on the agenda? All right. Item number 5, postponed item. It's a preliminary site plan review, proposed Cedar Pines Woods site condominium, 8 units/lots, east side of Crooks, south of Benjamin, 6622 Crooks, Section 4, currently zoned R1B, one family residential district. Mr. Carlisle.
Good evening to the Planning Commission tonight. If the Planning Commission would remember, this came before the Commission at the June 25th meeting, and at that time, the Planning Commission expressed strong concerns in regards to lot layout, specifically the impact upon adjacent neighbors. Well, since the 25th meeting, the applicant has significantly amended their site plan and brought in a cluster site plan development. We find that the cluster development as proposed is a significant improvement upon the site layout than the proposed conventional layout as proposed before. Not only does it provide a significant tree buffer of 45 feet, kind of a collar around the development, it also protects the adjacent neighbors and provides in perpetuity a guarantee of 45% of the site will remain open space in the future. The open space proposed by the applicant will be protected with a conservation easement. This will go on, this will be recorded with the county, and this will be shown on the title and any title search. So any future owners will be well aware of what they are purchasing as part of this agreement. It will be, the details about what's in that conservation easement will be worked out with the applicant, but the city will probably be a partner to that or named on that easement so that we will have protection as well to ensure that this does remain open space in the future. In regards to details about what can be done within the conservation easement, that will be again worked out with the applicant, but there will be some language in there that allows for cleanup, some cutting of dying into these trees. So there will be some changes within that conservation easement, but the intent of it is to remain open space, remain that tree buffer in the future. The development does meet all bulk regulations for the proposed zoning district. The applicant is proposing to preserve a significant number of trees A requirement in the cluster development is either a preservation of significant natural resources, creation of natural resources, and/or provide recreation facilities. The applicant notes that the preservation of the trees, as well as the additional landscaping on the north end of the street, will meet the requirement of preserving significant natural resources. The applicant has provided a tree protection plan. We do note that during construction, it is often difficult to preserve every tree that you do note on the plan to preserve. So we do note that after construction, a year after construction, the applicant should provide a tree survey to indicate which trees will be were removed as part of the development process that were indicated to be preserved initially. For those trees that are lost during the construction process, we do recommend a 2-to-1 ratio for inches removed to be replaced in a 2-to-1 ratio. A 2-to-1 tree replacement ratio is a pretty standard tree preservation ratio. It really discourages the removal of trees because it's the 2-to-1 can be is a significant number of trees inch replacement. The only other significant recommendation we have to the proposed site plan is we do find that there should be some sort of pedestrian trail or path going from the internal sidewalk out to Crooks Road, and there is an opportunity to provide that just north of Lot 7 and Lot 8. So in summary, we do find that the cluster provides a much greater site layout than was originally proposed. It does protect the neighbors to both to the south and to the north, and so we do recommend approval contingent upon 3 recommendations. The first is the applicant work with the city attorney's office in regards to the drafting of the conservation easement. The applicant provide a tree survey 1 year after the final certificate of occupancy is issued. Any tree removed on the site due to construction that was noted to be preserved on the tree survey, which was included in your packet, will need to be replaced at a 2-to-1 inch ratio replacement. And lastly, the applicant should provide a pedestrian connection from the internal sidewalk to Crooks Road.
Thank you, Mr. Carlisle. Any questions for Mr. Carlisle? Mr. Edmonds?
Yes, I'm curious because I saw in the inventory that there are some 24-inch huge oak trees and everything like that. If one of those was designated to be kept and it should be damaged and should die during this 1-year replacement period, are you saying that they would have to replace that with 24 inches caliper tree and a 2-to-1, that'd be 48 inches. So they would replace 24, maybe 2-inch caliper trees? Is that what it amounts to?
Yeah, that's the 2-to-1 ratio requires something such as that. And again, the hope is that they won't have to replace any trees. The hope is they will be able to preserve every tree they've indicated on their plan to be preserved. So, but this is only for those trees that were indicated to be preserved that will not be preserved as part of the construction.
I understand
So,
that.
but yes, and the reason for that is the proving of this cluster development is really contingent upon the preservation of the trees and what's shown on the site plan. And as such, the 2-to-1 ratio really is a discouragement to take down trees that aren't indicated to be removed. And to do so, a 2-to-1 is pretty standard replacement ratio for tree preservation requirements.
Thank you.
Mr. Krant?
I got a follow-up on that. Just to clarify a little bit better, you're saying if they took down a 24-inch diameter tree, they would have to replace with a 48-inch diameter tree?
No, they would have to replace with 48 inches. It could be done in 4 trees, it could be done in 6 trees, it could be done whatever that total is, but they have to replace with at least 48 inches caliber total.
Is there a way to put that in writing? I mean, replace a 1-inch with a 2-inch. It doesn't say diameter, height. It doesn't define the unit. I mean, it defines the unit, but it doesn't define where you're taking that measurement. I just want to, if I've got a question, I'm just saying I think it should be tweaked a little bit, the language.
The actual language can be worked out as something that we do as part of the agreement
Okay.
with the developer. It's a pretty standard number. It's usually taken at 5 foot from breast height. It's a pretty standard where you measure that caliper inch is pretty standard under normal landscaping terms. Understands what that measurement ratio really should be.
Okay.
Mr. Hudson, did you have a question?
Mr. Krant just covered the exact topic that I was going to raise.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Sanzik?
But if I clarify, but that's only in the preservation area, not, only trees that are damaged in the preservation area, not in the area with the other lots or where the road is being built. So it's going to be marked as save all trees within?
Yeah, the applicant has submitted a tree survey and indicated on the site plan which trees are going to be removed as part of construction. We won't count those trees to replacement, but if they remove any trees that are not marked as removed as of the plan submitted, those would have to be replaced 2-to-1 ratio. But they've indicated a number of trees are going to be removed as part of just the normal construction in the buildable area.
I was impressed by the tree survey, and I was surprised at the large variety of number of hickories, oaks, maples. There's quite a variety in there, and it was very impressive, and I can understand why we would want to preserve those.
Mr. Schultz.
Ben, is the 45% open space a requirement for the cluster option?
No, the requirement is 30% minimum.
30%, so the 45 feet is not a requirement. The 45-foot tree preservation is not a requirement.
The 45% open space is not a requirement. It was proposed by the applicant.
But therefore, the 45-foot tree buffer is also not a requirement.
As long as they meet,
To obtain their 30%.
as long as they meet the 30%, correct.
Because in looking at the plan, these people are only going to have, behind the fireplace in their house, they're only going to have about 6 feet of usable space for a backyard, and then there's going to be trees that they can't touch ever. I just think that's a bit onerous on potential buyers of these homes.
Well, I can answer that in 2 ways. One is the planning commission, if they find that if there's a consensus that that's too burdensome, they can work with the applicant to increase the amount of that rear yard space. Still, the goal is preserving the trees as well as the open space. And the second thing is these houses haven't been built. Future owners should be aware of what they buy. It will go on the title, it will go on the title search, so they will be aware of what they're purchasing when they do purchase the property.
Mr. Stratt.
Yeah, I just wanted to make a comment. It's amazing how all of a sudden the engineering can actually be all within the street right away and very little disturbed in the common area so that they can minimize the amount of trees that are going to be taken down. Whereas we've been typically seeing an awful lot of the backyards being torn up because of the utilities. And in this case here, they're all in the front area. It's really remarkable. We can save all those trees. Engineering can really, if they really want to, I think they can be creative.
Mr. Sanzica.
I think you notice that, a lot of times cities require rear yard drainage, and purposely for sump pump discharge. So if they directed the sump pumps to the front, that it would solve that problem. So they would still maybe concerns about the rear drainage, but it's.
Are you actually pretty involved with the stormwater drains?
A little bit.
Any more questions for Mr. Carlisle? Is the petitioner present?
Good evening, Bruce Michael.
Good evening. Would you like to add anything to?
The only question I have is what material would the trail be made out of? It's not specific. Wood chip, asphalt, concrete?
I didn't give any direction. I would recommend something more natural, like a wood chip or something of that nature, but I think really it's up to the direction of the Planning Commission.
And provided it was barrier-free, I think wood chip, I don't know if that gets us there, but barrier-free is our biggest concern.
Yes, Mr. Schultz.
In a matter of 3 years, wood chips are going to be fields again. I mean, the people that own these homes aren't going to be replenishing those wood chips every year for the next 30, 40, 60 years. So I think it has to be something a little more permanent than wood chips if it has to be built.
Fortunately, where it's located is more of an open area. If you looked at the pictures that we took, and the picture that's on Lot 7 that's facing north, you can see that essentially that's an open area, so we wouldn't have to remove any vegetation, any significant vegetation, to be able to put the path in that area. We're fine with whichever way you want to do it. If you want it to be concrete, all the sidewalks can be concrete, that's fine with us.
Mr. Tagle? If I may.
Yeah. Sorry, Mr. Hudson.
This seems to me to be a perfect spot for some sort of permeable substantial material, be it brick, or concrete or something that will let the moisture go through, but yet maintain a firm path and an unobtrusive path. Just a suggestion.
Could do a permeable asphalt. There's asphalt that's actually permeable to water.
I'm not aware of that, but I'll leave that to the creative people here, but I think a permeable surface would fit right in with that.
Have you indicated anywhere on your plans where the lighting is going to go on this street?
I don't believe we have. I see us only really doing a street light at the intersection, and maybe one in the planting island in the middle of the cul-de-sac. But at the most, I would see that. More likely, just the one at the intersection with Merrick.
Any consideration for lighting along this path,
Well, the path itself.
the walkway that we're talking about?
I don't know, I would think that you'd want to not do that. You'd want it to be a more natural feel.
Well, I'm thinking from a safety standpoint at night. I mean, I'm not talking about high light fixtures, I'm talking about something low, because we do have residential properties adjacent to the area and such, but just something from a safety, give somebody a sense of safety as they're walking along the path.
You're thinking of pedestrian level
Could be
bollards.
bollards, yeah. Or something low, 8 foot or something. I mean, but just something that would, kind of give some light to the ground. And
I was thinking more it's the 3-foot kind of stuff that's like a foot.
you could, yeah.
The idea is the guy that's living in Lot 7 and the guy that's living in Lot 8 are probably not going to want to have the light pollution they'd get from taller lights there, if it was me. Because the people that are going to buy this are people that want to have a natural setting. And there's some people that don't want that and some people that do. We do have some room, we've shown a particular footprint of a house. It isn't necessarily a house that's going to be built on every lot. And there's certainly room in there. We looked at kind of the typical depth of the kind of houses that we build, and we've left ourselves enough room to be able to put in a 12-foot deep, patio or deck before you hit the preservation area. And that's usually an adequate depth. Less than that gets a little bit difficult. And that would be in the areas where, the bump out is not going back. And it's a thicket. I walked it and took the pictures myself, and I was covered with scratches and mosquito bites.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to back up what you're saying about that lighting of that path. There could be a very efficient way to light that with, you're saying maybe 3-foot high pedestrian lighting. I'm just thinking, not that everybody's going to be walking in the winter, but in the months probably from October through March, it's dark at night. If you wanted to walk to Rochester Road and make it a pedestrian-friendly kind of entrance to the development, I would like to see that lighted at night with LED type low level.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking of an LED light, maybe even solar powered.
Yeah, that would be wonderful.
Kind of a thing.
But I think it's important because that is a long stretch. If that was all black, if I was facing it from my home and I wanted to go to Rochester Road and I'm looking down there, it looks a little spooky.
Tell you what, if you're trying to go to Rochester Road, you got a long walk.
Because it's not. We're going to be a very walkable, healthy community. We're looking toward the future here.
It's only 2 miles from here. This is Crooks here in this. But yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Something that's provides that, but is not. The other thing is if we can do it with some kind of solar-powered light, then we can avoid the cable that we have to run through there to be able to run the electrical. And again, try to do it with a minimal amount of disturbance to the area, because that's going to naturally infill. It's kind of open now, but it's going to infill. It's a forest progression that's going on there now, and that's just going to continue to infill now that it's not going to be mowed, because it was mowed by the current owners, what happened.
Mr. Evans.
If this pathway is to be, I'm assuming it's to be maintained by the condominium association
Developer will put it in.
in terms of like pruning the stuff back, the vegetation, so you could at least walk through it?
Oh, in terms of maintenance?
Yes.
would hazard a guess we'd put that in the association budget, that they've got to spend some dollars on that annually.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, thank you. This is not a public hearing, but if there's anyone in the audience who would like to come up and speak, please do so.
My name is Joel Pumphrey, and I live at 6616 Glendale. And up on the site plan, I'm number 14. And here's my concern. Prior to this, all they have done is moved it south, the street and the homes. And as Mr. Schultz had brought out, from the back of the homes, there's only 6 feet until you get to the wooded area. If you really examine the area that's to be preserved, there are large trees that are at the north side and large trees at the south side. There are no bushes and shrubs. It's all scrub area between the two sets. Along my property, and again, there's a right-of-way of 12 feet, 6 on my side and 6 on the preserve side. It's a snow fence, apparently it was put there in 1979 at the borderline. And grapevines are everywhere in that area, and that is what looks nice. In the wintertime, obviously, for 6 months of the year, the grapevines are gone. In between the 2 rows of trees, again, you just see scrub, and you see right through, right up to the back of the houses on Benjamin. If any of those trees that are just south of the backyard are killed off, all there will be is scrub and what's on the south side bordering my property. It's not going to be pretty at all. But that said, the other concern, like I said, would be the right-of-way. If anything's hooked up on that 12-foot strip of right-of-way, as I say, 6 on each side, will there be damage to the very large, beautiful trees that are there? And that has my concern. You figure from the back of those houses to my property, there's only roughly 50 feet. And like I say, it's very nice in the summertime. That's what we enjoy. But in the wintertime, you see right through it. There are no bushes and shrubs. It's just the beautiful trees and the grapevines that's kind of holding everything together. So that was my basic concern, preservation of that, noise from the homes being only 50 feet. And so that's my 2 cents worth.
Thank you.
And I will do this.
Mr. Kyle, do I remember reading in your report that you had some dimensions or distances from back of homes to back of homes, both north and south?
Yeah. The properties to the north, which are on Benjamin, are 160 feet from the front of the new houses.
Uh-huh.
That includes the distance over the road as well as the open space
Right.
preservation. To the south, it's over 90 feet from the rear of the homes to the rear of the homes that front on the Glendale cul-de-sac.
Okay, thank you. All right, we'll bring it back for discussion.
If I may,
Yes, Mr. Hudson.
just a suggestion. I don't like wordsmithing resolutions, but in this case, I'd like the proposed resolution kind of uses wishy-washy words when it was to provide documentation to guarantee. I would like to insert in there somewhere to execute documentation such as an open space easement or some sort of specific designation in there. That's what we're looking for. They could provide all sorts of stuff, but if they're not required to execute it, we're going nowhere with that. So maybe just tighten up the resolution a hair if we decide to approve this.
Mr. Schultz.
Question for Mrs. Lancaster, please. How many agreements are you aware of in the city like this that already exist? Where people have to, where there's a contract written by the city attorney and the developer that people can't molest trees on their property?
I'm aware of two, actually. One of them exists in the first PUD, the church with the condominium association. There's one regarding that, and there's also one at Cedar Knoll. In fact, our office pulled the file from Cedar Knoll in 2003. A conservation easement, very much like what we would adapt here, was adapted at Cedar Knoll. And where did we say that was? And off Big Beaver or Maple?
Off Big Beaver.
Okay.
East of Rochester.
And it's worked out very well because we are a signatory, as been mentioned, to that agreement. We can go in, we can, if we have to do a lawsuit, they have to reimburse us. We can also bill the association if we have to do any work. We can criminally prosecute if we can catch a neighbor. We tried to put in as many enforcement tools as we could, that if the association did not take care of it, we could. And it would be something similar to that. It's recorded, as been said, with the Oakland County Register of Deeds. If there's a master deed, that the condominium association would actually take over any duties of the developer. And it would be recorded against each member's property, each owner's property. So far, the Cedar Ridge one, both of those have worked out really well. We have not seen any cutting or anything of that nature, and we would make it extremely specific. I know there's been some question tonight about making sure that everybody understands the terms and some of the things that Ben mentioned about the replacement trees, if it's necessary, would all be included in that agreement. We'd try and tighten it up.
Follow-up. You just said, we have not seen. Who does the inspections and how frequently to see if something has been done that wasn't supposed to? Who goes out on an annual basis and counts the trees?
Well, I don't think that there's anything in that requires, as Ben is requiring, a count after a year. What we normally get is the other neighbors reporting on each other. We don't have staff to go out, but we certainly have other neighbors that know that a tree shouldn't be cut. Cedar Ridge also has some signs that says this is a tree preservation, and there shall be no cutting. So we could require that as part of the conservation easement. So they can't claim that they weren't put on notice. A lot of homeowners may not read their documents, but we could ask them to put some signs.
I'd like to just add to that what we would do is include that agreement as part of the purchaser's packet that they get that's required under the Condominium Act, which includes a master deed. It would include that agreement. It'd also be in our disclosure statement. That's the statement written in English that everybody, so that the customer can understand what they're getting. And I think what will be important in that disclosure statement is an education, basically, so people understand that this area is not your backyard that you can just go out and mow and turn it into something else. So I think if we do both of those items, we can certainly get it off track.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Kemp?
Yeah, I got a comment that right now, we seem to be really good at counting trees, but as the person who was bringing it up earlier in this discussion said, there's a lot of other natural beauty there that exists that provides a lot of cover as well. And I was just wondering if we've ever built anything to enforce that natural setting, not just in terms of trees, but in terms of just overall general cover as well, and also what the developer's plans were for maintaining the cover.
It's a thicket out there, and my viewpoint on it is that the thicket is what's going to attract certain buyers, because they want that natural. I mean, that's what I would want if it was me. Now, some other people don't want that. They want the big backyard they can play football in, kind of a thing. So our intention is that it's a no-touch zone. all our drainage and everything else is going to the front, so we don't have to do anything out there at all. Just, it's going to stay just like it is. We're not going to clean it up like a park or anything else. We're just going to leave it wild. It's our intention. And we'd be happy if you put language in that said it's going to stay that way. We're fine with that.
Isn't that the intent, Ms. Lancaster, of a preservation zone? It's not just talking about the trees, it's talking about that zone of property is untouchable.
The only thing we have to be careful of is, I don't know how many years this was, 4 or 5 years ago, we had, I think they call it a wind shear, where we had so many trees down our golf courses. Those kinds of things are the things we would write in, that he's required to clean those out and get rid of the tree trunks and things of that nature. But certainly, we can write language to keep it as wild as possible, and that's his intent, and if that seems what the neighbors would like too, then that's certainly, we can manage that. The only maintenance we would need is some kind of dangerous condition that we would have to ask them to do something about it.
Thank you. Mr. Krent, did you have a comment?
Just a comment to Sue. Can we put in any language in this agreement regarding that lighting of the path with pedestrian lighting, or is that something they have to offer?
Only if the path is it in one of the nature preserves?
Yes.
Okay, we can.
Okay.
Yeah, it's...
I'd like to add that.
It's basically an agreement that we agree on that has all the terms and conditions that would also inform any of the homeowners of what our intent is. And we'll work together on that and come up with the language. As long as we have your intent as to what you want him to do with the path and the lighting. And I don't know if that's going to be part of a motion, or you want to have him get planning approval based upon, and we could write in there that he has to get planning approval of the lighting and the path if you don't want to actually design something here tonight.
Mr. Schultz.
Mr. Savinant, has engineering reviewed this proposed plan and agreed that there's no need for rear yard drainage? Because in the past, we have negotiated with developers to leave a 25-foot stand of trees and had engineering tell them they had to be clear-cut to put rear yard drains in.
Engineering has reviewed this and is confident that we can maintain the preservation plan as proposed.
Thank you.
Mr. Strand?
Yeah, I think that the development that I developed, the 5 units I developed, we preserved all of the natural vegetation, and I think that the people really enjoyed it. I'm hopeful, though, that you're not going to preserve it in a straight line as indicated on here, but actually create some undulation. I can see where the tree preservation plan that you have here, or the existing plants of trees, kind of wander back and forth, so you can really create some real interest rather than a straight line. I hope we're not going to be talking about a straight line, but something that has a natural character to it. I don't know if that's what your intent would be or not.
Really, what we're going to try to do is allow the customer, when they landscape their lot, to be able to do something there and maintain architectural control, and part of architectural control is anything you can see on the outside. What I've liked when I've done this in the past is usually I'm looking for some kind of transition between the suburban mowed yard and nature. And usually we found a lot of times the best way to do that is with some kind of a mulch or something of that nature. And usually people get creative with that kind of thing. So, we're showing a line there because the line ties into the building setback line.
I understand the line, why the line is there, but I'm hopeful that there will be some creativity along those edges there that will go back and forth across the line and perhaps inside the line. And as far as the distance, there's 6 feet of, less than 6 feet in some areas that I developed, but some areas more. But we preserved all the natural vegetation that was just discussed, and that's the key thing too, is preserving everything underneath there.
Right, exactly.
That really adds the character to the entire site.
Mr. Sanzika?
I think what I'd be concerned about is if your contractors get in there to dig the basements, that if there's some specimen trees along that border, that line, that there would be some type of fencing around them to protect the specimen trees. And if that could be done, I think that would really help what Mr. Stratt is proposing, is to save the specimen trees along the border.
I had to
take
put
them
snow
out.
fences.
Yeah, with snow fencing.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
tree
I think
protection fence, the bright orange
Contractors
stuff.
were just come right over.
Contractors are notorious about cutting down whatever's in their way, and it wouldn't surprise me if they did that.
Fortunately, the builder and the developer are the same people here, so we can at least.
I don't think you operate the backhoe when you dig the basement.
Yeah, but if he wants to get paid,
I hope so.
Yes, Mr.
Just to piggyback on what Mr. Stratt said, you know, that undulating line, I really applaud him for mentioning that, because it gets me thinking maybe those situations where you've got a 6 foot between the back of the fireplace and the wooded area, maybe that could be increased to maybe 8 foot or 10 foot, and then bring out, if there's wooded area, bring it out to the sides so that it, around the house a little bit. Is there a way to, you know, you've got that 45% open space requirement, maybe, you know, which I would not like to see a straight line either. Maybe just be more creative with that, but still keep that 45%.
you know, there's some trees that are probably inside the building envelope, so we show to be removed, and I think wherever we can save a tree, we're going to save a tree, other than a situation where when you get done, the tree's probably going to fall down and create a problem, kind of a thing. But trees sell. You know, trees increase value. People like shade. And so our intention would be to keep whatever we can keep. But I think what we really want to try to do is, you know, it's going to be the typical single-family delivery of product, and that product is usually delivered non-landscaped, and the customer decides how they want to landscape. And I think our methodology there is going to be that they've got to submit their landscape plans to the Architectural Review Committee, which will be in the master deed documents, and I think that's where we have an opportunity to be able to guide them as best we can within that. But I think you're going to find the people that want to buy these kinds of places are going to be people that have more of a bent toward the natural, and they're just going to be more, I think, people that like plants, like landscaping, and we'll probably see a lot of creativity there, more than we can probably dream up ourselves, because we'll have 6 different owners who have 6 different ideas and do a bunch of different things. So I would suggest that that's going to be the best way for us to be able to do that, and since we're going to be, you know, in control of the property until we sell out, essentially, before we turn it over to the homeowners, it gives us an opportunity to, I think, control our destiny with regard to that concept of nature abhorring a straight line.
Good, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Shepke.
Yes, someone sitting back listening to the conversation back and forth. I think that, like you mentioned before, with the patio behind the house, you're really going to cut down the ability of the homeowner at all to transition from his grass or his patio into that wooded area. Now, this space that's supposed to be preserved, is it possible for the homeowners to cut into it at all with maybe bushes or lilacs, or, you know, something to transition and shield their patio a little bit? I know that when you get into some of these things, because I've run into it before, if this is considered a wild area and you touch it at all, you can get in hot water. So you said there'd be several different homeowners with their own expectations or ideas on how to make this transition. Well, they might be severely limited if they can't weave a pattern of something into that wild area a little bit, just to transition. So I'm not quite sure. That's a very, very tight envelope, and I really am not sure of if that can be doable and have an overall product that's going to really be desirable for the people involved.
Well, one comment I would make is that we would want the documents written so that people can add. It's a whole concept that they can't take away. And again, I think the important thing is, at least the way we usually build houses, is before the customer actually, you know, all the way through the process, we stake the house on the lot, show them where it's at, make sure they're comfortable with it. people that are going to be buying these houses, a significant piece of the reason that they want to be here is because they're going to have that setting. I mean, if it was me, that's what I want. The last house I lived in Ann Arbor, I was on 2.5 acres, and I had no yard. I mean, I plunked my house in between the trees as best I could, and, you know, that's what I wanted.
I understand that. I just didn't want them to be guilty of violating some technicality if they want to have some kind of a transition by adding something. That was my concern.
I think we certainly drafted the language that they can do additions as long as they're not something that's not native to the area or something that would be considered a nuisance type of a plant that could take over.
Yes, Ms. Lancaster.
I think because we have a property lot line, I have been listening to discussion about undulating borders and things. Once you have a lot line, that's that property owner's right to do whatever they want on their lot line. You're going to get an undulation anyway because trees don't grow in a row. But the minute we start allowing people to start putting things in the preservation area, we're going to get calls from neighbors. I got a call today from a neighbor who wanted me to have somebody go out and move a neighbor's willow tree because it's on our junk tree ordinance on private property. People know more than we think they know about what our ordinances say, and if a neighbor wants the willow tree in the preservation, we're going to get a call from a neighbor and we're going to get stuck with this enforcement. I think it would be better to just do the preservation area and not let anybody touch it. It sounds like it's a lovely area, and I mean, it's up to you, but my suggestion would be we're going to have a lot more enforcement problems if we start talking about, well, you can put something in, but you can't take anything out, because every neighbor is going to say, I don't like what they put in, and we're going to have a real trouble with enforcement. So I would suggest we not do that.
Thank you. Mr. Stratton.
Yeah, I think that the Architectural Review Committee, whoever is responsible for it, is really going to control and really have a lot of interest in protecting their own property as well. So they're not going to allow that to happen. That would be my experience based on condominiums. But I agree with what you're saying, Ms. Lancaster. But that really is going to be controlled by them more than anybody else, I think. And the neighbors will squeal on each other.
And again, I think the kind of clientele that'll be here will be ones that want this versus the standard suburban setting, which they can get in the surrounding lots, where maybe they've got younger kids and they want a bigger backyard so their kids can play, football or soccer or whatever it is that they want to do in the backyard. This kind of a setting, I think, is people that go, I really want to have the natural setting. That's what I'm after. And I think we're talking about 7 houses. I think there's plenty of clientele out there that want that.
Just want to make one more comment on that. I think this is 1,000% better than what you presented before. I really like this, so I think you did an excellent job.
Thank my design professionals.
Mr. Schultz.
I just want to wish the developer and the city attorney's office and everybody else involved good luck on this, because you've been given some really odd direction. The developer is standing here, the petitioner is standing here telling us that it's already a thicket. We have people on the Planning Commission that want all the natural undergrowth and vegetation preserved, yet the same people want it to be undulating. I'm going, well, 45 feet's pretty set. 45 feet is 45 feet. It's going to be a straight line. So good luck writing this agreement.
Any other comments or questions? Yes, Eric.
Yeah, I just have a question. Regarding the tree preservation area, is the developer only responsible for the trees that get removed during construction, or do they have to preserve it for?
But I think the trees, once it leaves the developer's hands, then it's the association's responsibility.
Mr. Chair, and to add to that, the agreement would run in perpetuity. So as long as that development is there, the preservation would stay there.
All right. Well, sir.
Mr. Taggart, if I might, could I follow up with what Ms. Lancaster just said?
Yes, you can. Hold on just a minute, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh,
go ahead.
Oh. You sort of put a hooker in there saying as long as it maintained its development, but if this conservation easement's going to run with the land, It's going to remain regardless of what happens to that subdivision, isn't it? It's not going to automatically terminate?
I think what I meant was if there was, God forbid, a tornado completely tore up and the developer started from fresh, tore everything down, and there was a new development, which you would see again, it would still be there. But yes, you're right, it's going to be recorded against that lot line.
Yes.
So it would stay there.
Okay, yes. That's good thought.
Okay. Just real quick.
I've heard a lot of hopes and maybes and this and that. My concern is if the 5 houses that are on the closest to the property line, and I mentioned before about the scrub involved there, if one or two of those homes 5 feet from the house is just scrub, it would stand to reason they will try to clean it up a little bit, especially if they had children. And we can all hope and we can write things in, but in reality, will it happen?
Are you talking about the new development, the homes on the new development?
Yeah, and the new development. If they're looking at a backyard and everything is just scrub for 40 feet, and then there's the nice trees out along the southern border, are they going to leave that as scrub?
Going to have to.
I know they have. That's what we're saying.
That's what,
but in reality,
that's what the agreement that they're going, the documents they're going to sign, they're going to acknowledge that they have to leave that untouched.
Okay. Okay, that would be my concern. And like I say, no one other than the other neighbors can call the city and say, hey, they're not doing it, because the city does not go out and inspect every year.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, ma'am.
I think we can rely on this gentleman to call us anytime. there's something
You
in that-
got that right, but
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I completely understand Mr. Pumphrey's concern, 100%. Just keep in mind, the hope is, anticipation is, that the 7 people that are living in here are living in there because of the scrub and because of the trees and because of that preservation easement. They want to maintain it. They don't want to clear it out. They don't want to cut grass. They're like me. They're lazy. They don't like cutting turf grass. That's one of the attractions, so they're going to leave it alone, and
Absolutely.
that's the hope.
Yep. Mr. McLeod.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, the only other point I want to add to Mr. Pumphrey's, to his point is, the only reason we're able to preserve these trees is a conservation easement to begin with. Under a conventional subdivision, he would be allowed to just clear cut the whole site. So the conservation easement really is protection to the homeowners existing on the southern and northern line, as well as the future homeowners. So really, the thought from our end is this is really a win-win for all parties involved versus what would happen under a conventional layout, lot layout. Thanks.
Thank you. Well, would someone like to put forth a motion?
Who's a good wordsmith?
Well, sir, quickly, because this is not a public hearing, and I'd invited people up earlier, but go ahead.
Okay. My name is Paul Pitts. I live at 6617 Glendale Drive in the Bridge Park subdivision. I just wanted to clarify something for my own knowledge. 45 feet on the north side of this property and 45 feet on the south side of this property is supposed to be preserved. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. But isn't the property only 200 feet to begin with?
I don't know. I have to look at the drawing.
So that leaves 110 feet. What is the standard area for a road?
It's a private road. He's doing a 40-foot private road.
40-foot private?
40-foot private road.
So that takes it down to 70 feet?
Which is a lot depth.
Mm-hmm. Lot there.
Property depth of 70 feet? What size homes are going to be put on here?
Well, it doesn't matter. I mean, there are requirements of the size of home that he can put on this property, and this is what's left. And he's willing to go along with it.
But this property is surrounded by 3,000 square foot homes.
You know, again, when developers come forth to us and they have a proposal, as long as they meet the zoning ordinance requirements, you know, it's kind of like there's a free market out there. And if they want to build these homes on these lots, whatever size he wants to build, he's got the right to do that. He feels there's a market out there for it, and we wish him well.
Well, You know, I just don't know what you can actually put on 70 feet. I had a house in Sterling Heights that was 60 by 120, and all of my backyard was big enough for was a deck, a swing set, and my dog to run around. I don't see what can be done on 70 feet, but
I can hand this gentleman a site plan that he can look at during the meeting. It's not a problem.
All right. Could you just display it on the screen?
yeah, I've got one.
It's up on the screen now.
It's the same one I have. But like I said before, I don't believe that this is even truly to scale. This is not a true representation of what that property is. So, that's just my opinion.
Are those documents certified?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Just wanted to make a comment. You realize that he could have come in with a different type of a development where he could wipe out all the trees, and you look at a backyard. Instead, there's 40 trees, 40 foot, I don't know if it's 40 foot or whatever was said, of trees and shrubs. So that's your option. We think this is an excellent, I think that this is an excellent scheme, you know, in trying to protect also the neighbors as well. To me, I think this is an excellent solution. It's a problem site.
That was my only concern, is what's actually said here and what is going to happen on the ground.
All right, thank you. All right. Mr. Krent,
I'll try reading it.
thank you.
Okay, resolve that preliminary site condominium approval pursuant to Article 8 of Section 10.02 of the zoning ordinance as requested for Cedar Pines Woods site condominium, 8 units/lots, east side of Crooks, south of Benjamin, in parentheses, 6622 Crooks, Section 4, currently zoned R-1B, one-family residential district, be granted subject to the following. Applicant shall work with the city attorney's office to provide documentation to guarantee that all open space portions of the development will be preserved and maintained as approved, and that all commitments for such preservation and maintenance are binding on successors and future owners of the subject property. 2, applicant shall provide a tree survey 1 year after the final certificate of occupancy is issued. Any tree that was removed or died as a result of construction that was shown to be preserved on the approved preservation plan shall be replaced at 2 inches for every 1 inch removed. I want to add to that, and to be clarified a little further by our city office staff. Applicants shall provide pedestrian connection via trail or path from the internal sidewalk to Crooks Road. Oh, Crooks Road, that's correct. That's my own little, okay. And that path will be illuminated at a low-level pedestrian, with low-level pedestrian lighting, to be worked out with our staff.
Is there a second? Mr. Stratt, any discussion?
Could I make a suggestion?
Absolutely.
Could I, who seconded?
Mr. Stratt?
Mr. Stratt, thank you. Could I suggest a durable, barrier-free pedestrian connection, rather than just a pedestrian connection?
Oh, why, sure. I'll amend my resolution.
Good with that?
I'll agree.
Okay. Mr. Sanzica?
We're just curious, it said, have a tree survey after the, I believe it says after, 1 year after the final certificate of occupancy is issued. Is that if the 8th lot is sold in 1 year after that point, or is that specific enough?
That's how it's written. I mean,
I think it's specific enough. I understand. Well, I helped to write it.
what's your
How would
question,
be
Phil?
considered if one lot isn't sold for 10 years, and you have a tree survey 11 years from now? I mean, that just, it's not specific.
That's true. Well, it is specific, but your point is, the tree survey could be 11 years down the road.
That's right, it wouldn't be reasonable, I guess. Maybe that's a better,
Yeah.
But
maybe once it's turned over to the associate, before, I don't know if there's a condition that after half the lots are sold, that it'll be turned over to the association. But that may be a good point when the developer should do the tree survey once, before it's turned over to the association.
So the test would be prior to turning over the
The site condominium.
the site condominium to the association.
Right.
That makes sense.
The only concern they have with that is there's a potential that there's 7 lots the final lots won't be constructed or planned out even after it's turned over to the homeowner association, because if they meet that 50% and the 6th and 7th lot aren't built out yet, there's still that vagueness. The point was tying it to the last certificate of occupancy, so at that point, all 7 lots, all 8 lots are constructed. They're platted, they're planned, and they're built.
But the developer may not be building the last lot. I guess that's my concern.
Mr. Edmonds?
And then the burden goes on the homeowner association to do the survey.
Well, that's my.
I think Ben's idea was that, the idea is, once you get done with construction, then the potential that we might yank out trees because we're trying to, put in, say, a larger house than we originally planned, is once that construction's all done, then basically you want to take a check then to make sure that we haven't tore out some trees that we're not supposed to tear out after the construction. I think that was the intent behind it, really, right?
Ms. Lancaster, does this requirement go onto the association? If there's lots undeveloped by the time the association takes over the site condominium, are they required to provide the survey?
Not the tree preservation plan, and I kind of see what's going on here. We need some kind of determination, and perhaps, I don't know if this would work, but how about making it that it either has to be done 1 year after the final certificate of occupancy is issued, or after the association, whichever comes first. I don't know. I know what you're looking for. You're looking, in case he doesn't build the last 2 houses for 10 years, what do you do? And either that, or you could require 2, one at the turnover of the association, because they won't be able to be bound by this, because it's a developer's responsibility, or and another one after a final occupancy.
So the association cannot be bound to this requirement? Is that what I just
No,
heard?
because it's up to the developer, and we wouldn't want to saddle the association with having to do a tree preservation plan when they didn't, it's not something that, unless, well, we could make it maybe part of the agreement.
Couldn't there be money put in escrow or something for this, or is this
Sure.
getting too
Yeah,
complicated?
it's probably getting too complicated. I guess anything can be turned over to the association as long as it's written into the master deed and it's in our conservation easement. It's not really part of our conservation easement. Well, I guess you could say it is. So we could include it with that whoever, but we still have that issue of when do you want it, in case he doesn't build all the
But
units.
why don't you do it this way, though?
Hang on just a second. Mr. Hudson?
I don't know why we don't, with the start of construction, require that the tree survey be done at that point. And then, as you progress, or you reach some point in construction, that you certify what the tree survey is, because if something's missing during this period of construction, you've got nothing to go back to show that something's been missing. A tree's been cut down, destroyed, or whatever. I think the tree survey should be made right away.
Well, I
And
thought
then
we
it may
had
be
one.
amended.
Yeah.
We have one now.
I would tie it into every single C of O. Every time we get a C of O, we have to confirm for the area that's behind that lot is that we haven't taken anything we're not supposed to. 'Cause that way it gets dealt with right then.
But what I want to make sure that we do is that if you don't develop all 8 properties and you turn the condominium over to the association, we still need to know that whoever develops the last properties, that they are going to abide by these requirements.
Right, but I think if you end up, whichever builder builds it, let's say even Joe Customer comes and buys the lot and builds himself or whatever, or hires a builder to do it. Before the guy can get a C of O for his house, he has to go ahead and verify to the sufficiency of the city, therefore the building department or the building and planning department, that no trees got taken down that weren't supposed to, and if they are, then he's got to put them up before they'll give him a C of O.
Yeah, that's fine. Can some language be crafted in along those lines?
I think so. We can put it in the conservation easement that either a successor developer or the association is bound by this 1 year.
Okay. All right. You good, Phil?
That's fine. A nice compromise. Thank you.
I don't want to be sitting out here a year later, 3 years down the road, having to do something a year after we've done a last EVO. I'd rather deal with the problem right with each house and get it done. Be done with it.
That's a fair compromise. I think that's very well done. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? Mr. Shepke?
When you put any kind of burden on the homeowners association, it kind of scares me because those are the people buying the houses. And there's things that can happen. I agree with the builder that it should be taken after the homes are up and if the trees are in good order and they haven't, within a few months, I think if the root systems were disturbed enough, they would know that they would see some kind of damage has been done, and if there's any decay or the trees start dying. But I don't like to see the burden put on that homeowners association. Those people, most association fees in that are there to maintain common property. They're not there to penalize the homeowners that have put their hard-earned sweat and blood money into those homes. So I don't like to see things put on the homeowners association.
Mr. Fagan, question,
please. Mr. Hudson.
After all this discussion, we've got a motion at the table, and I'm not sure what we're going to be voting on with all this discussion. I'm going to suggest that when we're through talking about this motion, maybe somebody restate the motion to tell us what we're doing.
Mr. Schultz, did you have a comment?
I think the motion's been on the floor long enough. We either need to do something with it.
Mr. Schultz, if there's comments that people want to speak their mind, I'm going to let them speak their mind.
Fine.
Is there any more discussion? All right. Mr. Sanzica.
I'd like to amend the motion to say that tree survey should be completed after each certificate of occupancy for each lot. And then paragraph 2.
Well, the maker of the motion, or,
That's fine with me. Do I have to
Mr. Savinet's going to capture all of these thoughts.
Surprisingly enough, after that somewhat confusing but very helpful discussion we had that actually makes sense to me, don't ask me to repeat it. Kathy's not here, she's on vacation. She takes this hieroglyphic shorthand that she'd be able to read to you. I'm going to have to go to the tape, but your option is to have Mr. Krent restate it or trust me to get it right, and we'll review the minutes next meeting to hope I got it right.
I'd like to move that I trust Mr. Savinat to get it right and get Mr. Sanzica's amendment in there.
Are you good with Mr. Sanzica's?
I'm okay with that, too. I'll agree to that as a second.
Mr. Hudson, are you all right with that?
No, I'm a little uneasy with that we're going to vote to approve a motion that's not been drafted yet, and I'm not saying Mr. Savinek can't do the job, but it seems to me, I don't know how we can legally pass a resolution without knowing what it's going to say.
Well, Mr. Savinek.
I don't think we really touched, there's 3 conditions here. I don't think we touched number 1. Number 3 says the applicant shall provide a durable, barrier-free pedestrian connection via a lighted trail with
Pedestrian level.
lower level lighting connecting the internal sidewalk to the Crooks Road. That one's, I think we can all agree that one's pretty clear. So really, number 2 is what we're talking about. The second condition is what we're talking about. We could, and I appreciate your point, we could recess, take 5 minutes, and Ben and I and Mr. Sanzica could try to craft something, or Mr. Sanzica could take a stab right now at...
I think it's very simple. I think rather than 1 year after the final certificate of occupancy is issued, it should be after each certificate of occupancy is issued.
Right. 1 year after each certificate of occupancy.
That's right, that's right.
Yeah.
And just to clarify, Mr. Chair, the rest of that sentence would remain the same, Mr.
Yes.
Sanzica?
I believe so.
Or the rest of that paragraph, I'm sorry.
That's what I agreed to as well.
I'm still confused, because we're looking at a potential 7 or 8 tree surveys?
Oh, just for that specific
But
area.
only in the area of the lot.
For each lot.
Well, we're going to say that then, because I don't think we have.
Each certificate of
He
occupancy.
did say each certificate of occupancy. 1 year
Yeah,
after
good
each
point,
certificate of occupancy.
That's
what he said.
Sanzika. I'll trust you.
I agree. It should be behind each respective site. A survey should be completed 1 year after this certificate of occupancy for each site.
So basically, the developer has already done the survey.
Well, he's done the initial.
He's done the initial survey. They know which trees are to be preserved and which can be removed. They're going to mark the the ones that are to be preserved. They're going to go in, build the foundations, build a house. They're going to know which trees are supposed to remain. And at that point, the heavy lifting's been done, and they're going to be able to, a year later, say, yep, they're all there, or we lost one, we're going to replace it with this, and then we move forward.
Right.
That's what that says.
You good now?
Yeah, good now.
All right. Mr. Savinant, the vote, please.
Mr. Krent?
Yes.
Mr. Sanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Shepke?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Stratt?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Kempen?
Yes.
Thank you. All right. Item number 6, preliminary site plan review, file number SP 921A, proposed Briggs Park condominiums east side of Rochester, north of Lamb, section 14, currently zoned RT, one family attached residential district. Mr. Carlisle?
Yes, thank you. Again, this is another Mr. Michael application. Hopefully this one's a little bit easier than the last one to understand. Briggs Park is an existing attached condominium development. It was approved in 2006 for a total of 54 attached condominium units. To date, 4 buildings have been constructed. A total of 15 units have been completed. The applicant is requesting approval to construct 4 additional units by converting what was approved for 3 units, 4 buildings that were approved for 3 units, to convert those to 4-unit buildings. The proposed buildings, in addition, meet all the RT district requirements. However, in regards to the number of units, we support the addition of 3 of the units. However, the proposed building number 9 is going from 3 units to 4 units, really creates some congestion issues and circulation issues in that corner of the development. So we are recommending approval of the increase to a total of 57 units, not the 58, with building 9 remaining a 3-unit development, not a 4-unit development. Our other recommendations in regards to the project is the applicant provide the sidewalks should be placed into an access easement. Currently, they're not shown within a public access easement. We ask that the applicant add additional landscaping along Rochester Road, specifically adjacent to Building 11, because there's a gap in landscaping there. And the applicant should provide a lot coverage calculation on the final site plan. It appears they meet that requirement. I'm pretty confident they do. However, the calculation was not shown on the site plan submitted. So in summary, we recommend approval contingent upon building 9 remains a 3-unit development, not a 4-unit development, and the 3 other recommendations that I previously noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Schultz.
What happens if the maximum lot coverage is exceeded with these 3 units after we pass this resolution?
They would have to come back to the Planning Commission for approval of a, well, actually, they have to get a variance from the Zoning Board of Appeals, and the Planning Commission's approval would be null and void.
Anything else from Mr. Carlisle? Mr. Michaels, do you have anything to add?
No, I don't, but I'm pretty certain that we will not exceed the coverage requirement, particularly when the 1 unit's not being added.
Thank you. Any questions for the petitioner? Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak to this item? All right, bring it back to the table. Any discussion? Do we have a motion? Mr. Hudson.
Resolved that the preliminary site plan approval pursuant to Article 8 of the zoning ordinance as requested for the proposed Briggs Park condominium located on the east side of Rochester, north of Lamb, Section 14, within the RT, which is the one-family attached district, be granted, subject to the following conditions. 1, maintain Building 9 as a 3-unit building rather than the proposed 4-unit building. 2, provide maximum lot area covered by building calculations. 3, place sidewalks within an access easement. And 4, add additional evergreen landscaping along Rochester Road, specifically adjacent to Building 11.
Second.
Second by Mr. Schultz.
Mr. Sanzika?
Yes.
Mr. Shepke?
Yes.
Mr. Schultz?
Yes.
Mr. Stratt?
Yes.
Mr. Tagle?
Yes.
Mr. Edmonds?
Yes.
Mr. Hudson?
Yes.
Mr. Kempen?
Yes.
Mr. Krant?
Yes.
Congratulations. Good luck. All right, item number 7. This is public comments for items on the current agenda. Anyone out there to speak to that? Seeing no one, bring it back to the table, and we'll go around for Planning Commission comments. Ms. Lancaster, we'll start with you, and welcome back.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be back, and I just want to say that I got reports from Lori that you all were very well behaved. So.
Is it my turn?
It is.
I sent an email out to all planning commissioner members informing you of a citizen planner course that was available. I've got, Mr. Shepke came to the counter today. I was up to my eyeballs in meetings, and I wasn't able to respond to him, but we can talk offline. But is anyone else interested in attending? You don't have to tell me now, but the next couple of days, let me know. Also, Michigan Association of Planning, their annual conference is in Kalamazoo this year, October 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. I believe the conference brochure is in the planning publication that was provided to you. It's also available online. Let me know who wants to attend that. I'll take a show of hands in 2 weeks, and then we'll get that going. So think about that. It's very informative, it's very rewarding. They do a really nice job, and Kalamazoo is a really great city. So think about that, and you can email me or let me know by next meeting. Thank you.
Thanks. Mr. Hudson?
Nothing, thank you.
Okay. Mr. Kempen?
Yeah, I just want to make one comment that natural development is kind of an exciting thing. I know it's been done more so in the northwest side of the country, and they're finding out that in a lot of these developments that the home values are actually worth a lot more after they're built, maintaining that natural setting, than clear cutting, even though there's additional engineering and construction costs to try and work around it. It's exciting to see here in the Troy community some of these progressive development techniques that maintain the natural environment. I think it's a positive for everybody involved. So.
Thank you. Mr. Stratt?
Welcome back. No, nothing else.
Mr. Schultz?
No comment.
Mr. Shepke?
Just a very brief comment. Just a curiosity more than anything else is with the legal department, is there anything new on the transit center, the challenges in court and that? There's been rumors that they've hired some outside legal consultants to help our city attorney fight this thing, and I wondered what's going on. I'd rather get it from the horse's mouth than hear a lot of rumors out there. So can you enlighten us at all on the status of the transit center?
Well, I can only tell you that I think we're still waiting to hear for leave to appeal. I have not heard that we have any other outside counsel. I do know that there were some other counsel, well, I'm thinking of a different case. So I really am not that helpful since Lori's been doing it, but I will see if she is willing to do maybe a report for you the next meeting to kind of update you. And also, you should all know that Lori, as all of us, are available anytime, and if you ever want any information, you should feel free to call her directly, and she'll be happy to talk to you and fill you in. You certainly are members of the board, and she'll be happy to talk to you about that. Okay?
Mr. Evans?
Just as a follow-up to that, Mr. Van Dat last night at the city council meeting gave a very comprehensive report on the transit center, including an overview of some of the legal issues. So I would direct you to look at that. There's really great pictures he's taken also. So it was an excellent report, and I thank him for it.
Mr. Sanzica?
I just wanted to compliment the planning department and the planner on the Cedar Pines. It really came around nicely. It's a nice job, and with a little innovation and work, I think it really turned the site around to a very beautiful site. So my compliments to the planning department.
Can I comment on that, Mr. Chairman?
No comments, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Definitely a team effort, beginning with the last meeting we had where the Planning Commission sent a very clear message about the expectations on the developer and on this particular property, which had some challenges. That was backed up by Lori, who was appearing from the city attorney's office. There was a lot of work done by myself, by Mr. Carlisle, and most importantly, the developer heard and responded and came back with a significantly improved layout. So I think it was a complete team effort.
Mr. Carlisle? Eric? All right, very good. I have nothing, and we're adjourned.